Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Waterbury Board of Education workshop at Maloney Magnet School. We begin tonight with a silent prayer. Commissioner Thomas Van Stone, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, Principal Cullen.
Good evening, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. We are not going to take too long from your time tonight, but it's all about our students, and we've been focusing the last 2 years on leadership skills and really having our students be the leaders. So I thought tonight I'd bring a little sample of some of our leadership and our students that play leadership roles here at school. Behind me are 3 of our students that are on what we call the Student Lighthouse Team, and they help make some major decisions and run some major events here at school. But tonight, Guhan, who's a 5th grader, is going to tell you a little bit about being a leader, and then he's going to introduce 2 of our other students who are going to share essays they wrote in their co-teaching writing class with Mrs. Egan, because we're teaching them to speak professionally about an opinion that they have. So I'm going to turn it over to our students. Guhan.
All right.
I have had a lot of opportunities since Maloney started participating in the Leader of Me, such as writing speeches, creating songs about leadership, and using leadership skills. We have learned to keep data notebooks and write personal and academic goals for ourselves and strategies to achieve them. We all write a philosophy statement. Mine is, if you fall 7 times, you get up the 8th. Our 3rd grade leaders worked on opinion writing earlier this year in our co-taught language arts class. One of the assignments was to read an article in Time for Kids about dress code and then write a letter to the Board of Education in which they had to state their opinion. The students are often given an authentic audience to give validity to their writing. They've written to Senator Hartley, State Representative Jeff Berger, Ms. Cullen, their parents, the PTO, and even President Obama. They did a great job organizing their thoughts and putting their ideas and reasons into letter format. We wanted the students to use their leadership skill as well as to give you their opinion on dress code by having them read their letters to you during our meeting here at Maloney. Now I present to you Jayla Cruz and Truth Ramirez.
Dear members of the Board of Education, my name is Jayla Cruz and I am a 3rd grade student in Mrs. Maloney's class. Our class read an article on dress code and discussed the pros and cons. I have formed my opinion and would like to share it with you. I think we should not have dress code at Maloney Magnet School. First of all, students do not get to wear what they enjoy like jeans and t-shirts. Also, dress code clothes are not comfortable. The collars are stiff and so are the pants. It is no fun playing gym with a collared shirt. Furthermore, some students can get suspended for not following dress code. That is not a good thing. Finally, teachers spend too much time enforcing dress code, which takes away from teaching time. There are some reasons why I think we should not have dress code at Maloney Magnet School. I hope you consider some of these reasons when you discuss dress code in the future. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Jayla Cruz.
Very well written, Jayla. Now we have the other side of the coin from Truth.
Dear members of the Board of Education, my name is Truth Ramirez, and I am a 3rd grade student at Maloney Magnet School. Our class read an article on dress code and time for kids. After discussing the pros and cons, we formed our own opinion. I would like to share it with you. I think we should have dress code at Maloney Magnet's school. One reason is it takes less time for students to get ready in the morning because there are fewer choices. Another reason is it helps stop bullying because kids don't get picked on about what they wear. Also, it helps kids focus on learning by taking away fashion distractions. Finally, students learn to dress for future work. For example, when we start working, we will have to wear business attire clothing like shirts and ties or a uniform. The dress code will help us be ready for success. These are some reasons why I think we should have a dress code at Maloney Magnet School. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my opinion.
Wow. Good, my hand.
So this is just a small sampling of the leadership skills that we have going on here at Maloney, and we wanted you to see that from them directly. 3rd grade, 5th grade, they're amazing. And as always, some of my teachers stayed to be with us here tonight too. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job, guys.
Does the board have any questions of Principal Cullen? Yes, Vice President Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I don't have a question. I have more of a comment or a statement. As long as I've been on this board, I am incredibly impressed by the presentation, by the articulation of these 3rd graders. They presented so much better and clearly than some of our adult presenters. And I gotta tell you, you guys are phenomenal and future leaders. And so, great job, guys. I was very impressed. And Maloney always does a great job with the students. And a credit to you and your staff. Phenomenal presentation by these kids and by their parents. So kudos.
Thank you so much. We had our 2nd annual Leadership Day a couple weeks ago, and we had so many of our students present just like that. And some of them without a paper in front of them. They say it from the heart, and it's things that they practice every day, so it's amazing. Thank you.
Commissioner Van Stone.
Thank you, Madam President, through you. I recall in the past, we had like a TV studio feed come into this meeting. We have a TV studio here, right? Or some form of audio visual that you guys have?
We have the TVs in each classroom, so we're able in the morning, and actually our students run morning announcements, and they're seen in all the rooms. Correct.
You need to have a point-counterpoint show, because that was incredible.
Wasn't that awesome?
That was incredible. It was perfect. Each one calmly, which myself and the rest and some of the other members of the board don't know how to calmly discuss things. That was fantastic. And my favorite part of this job is when the students come before us. I'm going to tell you, this was so much better than just sitting through a PowerPoint by yourself and having the students do this. That was fantastic. And you're right, I don't have all the names down, but dressing for where you want to be as opposed to where you are is key to success. So that was a very good point that you made. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam President.
Any other commissioners? I would just like to recognize if you have any staff here tonight or parents of Maloney School. If you please
Absolutely.
stand.
I have both. If
Okay.
everybody could just stand up for a second. My parents
Thank
of
you very
Jayla and
much.
Truth as well, and Guhan.
Thank you for all you do. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Chief Academic Officer Darren Schwartz.
Good evening, Board. Tough act to follow.
And before we begin, I'd like to wish you a happy birthday.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. So tonight in front of you, you have a job description. This is a current position that exists at the Office of Early Childhood Recruitment and Student Placement Coordinator. One of the items that I want to point out to you is The salary is consistent. This is a Title I grant-funded position. This person is responsible not only for answering phones and directing parents, but responsible for the over 1,300 preschool registrations that exist in the district. They're also responsible for working with parents, collaborating with them about which preschool program is the best program for them in the city based on their transportation and location. They're also responsible for maintaining files. If you notice, there's an older job description behind it, and we've updated it. And one of the items that I want to point out is we have added bilingual preferred to this position, as they do work with many of our parents as they come in and register their child. One of the other things that I want to point out to you is this is an SEIU for benefits only. We did discuss it at personnel last night. It's SEIU for benefits only, but it is a non-union position.
Any questions from the board? Commissioner Van Stone.
Thank you, Madam President. Can we have a better explanation why this is not a new position? I get it, it's a title grant, so I won't, of course, find it in my book of operating expenses. But are we somewhere in the middle of between new and rearranging our priorities?
This is somebody's currently in this job right now, registering students. That person has been recommended for hire for a different position. So as that goes through, we took this as an opportunity to rewrite the job description to be more updated now that everyone is in the Office of Early Childhood rather than in the basement of Sprague or School Readiness and Central Office. This person has a little bit more responsibility of doing some more clerical work at the office and answering phone calls. So it's a current position that exists. We are rearranging priorities. There were a few positions in the Office of Early Childhood that we did not fill when two employees went to become paraprofessionals, and we didn't fill in those positions. But this is a current position that we obviously need. We need somebody registering parents as they come in.
The Title I money, what's our flexibility on how we use that money? So in other words, there wasn't a grant written for this position, right? We have Title I money. So what's our flexibility on how we use that money?
Yeah, Title I's, it's pretty broad, and has several different uses. One specifically to focus on and early childhood. There's a lot of our reading positions are focused on Title I. This is improving academic success. And the way that I understand, when Linda couldn't be here tonight, when she writes the grant, she does include the different positions that she does, or the different ways that she's using the grant to not only improve academics, but also the positions such as a secretary or somebody that's registering or a coordinator, because it's a job that has to get done if you have preschool students coming to your district. And so she tries to include every position that would be possibly included in not only just preschool, but also in the areas such as reading and academic improvement.
I asked the question because we do have flexibility in how we utilize the dollars that are in that Title I grant.
Absolutely.
And what's the pay scale on this position?
25,000 to 29,000.
Pardon me?
25,000 to
Okay.
29,000.
But I'm just trying to, for my own benefit, say we have this money through this grant. It's at our decision-making on how to utilize this money.
Yes.
So, okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Okay, number 3.
Okay, the next position in front of the board that also went to Personnel Committee is the Supervisor of Family and Community Engagement. I have included, and I hope that it made that into your packet, an example of some of the new responsibilities under the ESSA law for how we as a district will be not only utilizing the Faith Center, but engaging families and communities, as it's a heftier part of the law now. And as you could see, The local educational agency is now going to be responsible for not only incorporating a policy now for family involvement, which we kind of already do, but there's a heavier emphasis on including parents and families and writing that policy. Each school having a policy, making sure that we're supporting family engagement, not only through strategies such as you heard last week a parent discuss we need to get out more and do some more events for curriculum instruction and assessment. The new law specifically dictates that, and this supervisor would currently oversee the entire FACE Center, where there are several employees that are currently working not only with families but also community. And so right now it's a group that we opened it up last summer, if you recall. In that group, they've handled almost 2,000 incidents up to this year, from phone calls to emails to registrations to complaints. And what we're trying to do is focus that group not only on resolving issues that arise on the daily basis within the district, but also being more proactive of how we can actually do engage families in a more meaningful way. Basketball nights, movie nights, and all that are great, but we're using something called dual capacity framework, which we're looking at how to engage families in a more comprehensive way that's actually meaningful. The reason why we also thought this should be a supervisor position within the district is that when you start talking about each individual school having a policy on family engagement and strategies attached to it, it's very difficult for someone that hasn't had that administrative experience in the past to work with principals, or that, because they understand the running of a building, the administrative part of the building, all the things that are happening. And one of the things that we did talk about is, at least internally, was making it a supervisor or not, and we felt that working with all 30 schools and 30 administrators, including being over the parent liaisons, FRCs, and different aspects of the district, that it rose to the level of being a supervisor. One thing I also want to point out to the board is, for the first time, even the U.S. Department of Education has now recognized the importance of family and community engagement. They've hired a lady named Frances Frost, who is the Family and Community Engagement Ambassador for the U.S. Department of Education. And this is also a model that's very similar to what they have in larger cities, such as New Haven and Hartford, who have welcome centers, such as ours.
Commissioner Van Stone?
Thank you, Madam President. I think my line of question will be exactly the same. New position or reorganization of duties?
So this would currently be a new position funded under Title V and Priority School District for supervisors. And again, the way that it would roll out is, if approved by the board, we would post the position. Supervisors would have the ability to have a lateral transfer into this position. If that would be the case, then we would look at if that would require, if another supervisor came in, that we would either reorg some of those possible duties, or we would have to rehire at that level. But we wouldn't know that until we post them.
You say Title V, but it's listed as Title I. Is that a subset of Title I, or?
No, and Doctor, I think you know Title V a little bit better than I do.
Yeah, Title V is innovative programming, and I believe, if I'm not...
The agenda says Title I.
Yeah,
that's why.
I thought it was Title I.
Linda told me yesterday Title V, but I can double check that for
Title
the board.
V is for innovative programming, outreach, things of that sort, innovative type programming.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, I need to recheck the funding
Yeah.
before next week. I want to make
Okay.
sure we're on that. But, and that money, we need to really spend down on, because I don't see Title V funding in the near future.
That's understood. But these duties are somehow now being accomplished?
Well, it's, right now, not everything in ESSA has gone into effect in terms of the law. What I would say is the FACE Center, they have some amazing employees within that center that they kind of get the job done, but there is no one specific supervisor of the program. And so right now, Marion does a lot of, like as I said, handling the day-to-day issues, but we I don't think we're as proactive as we could be, as I think you've heard probably all as board members at some point about getting into the communities and making sure that we're truly engaging parents. And so we don't have one person really dedicated to that as a full-time job now.
And what is the pay scale we're looking at this?
This would be the SAW pay scale for a supervisor for 12 months. So the approximate pay scale is $100,000 to $124,000.
Okay, so we have, regardless of where the funding's coming from, Title I, Title V,
Yeah,
our own operating budget, we have another six-figure salary. So if we now take that title money and deduct it from what we spent it on in the past, I get the spend down part. But we now deduct that six-figure number from what we had tried to spend it on previously. What are we losing out on by not using it the way we did in the past?
That would only be if the case is that if another supervisor doesn't internally transfer over and we can't reshuffle those job descriptions, then yes, we would be hiring and adding that and subtracting it out. In discussions with our budget office, Dr. Roulette and Linda Riddick, we did originally set aside monies for a coordinator of FACE when we opened it, and so we did, and that's a grant cycle that I believe lasts 2 years. Is that correct, Doctor?
Yes.
And so we originally had that actually set aside because we knew this was coming. This is a national trend for focusing more on families and communities. Is one of the top most effective strategies for districts to and it's one of the fastest growing strategy for many districts to do it more of a two-generation model of how you're working with families rather than just the students, because we know they go home. And so we actually put aside money for this year. We just were waiting and having internal debates between a coordinator and a supervisor.
Mr. Schwartz, I believe too, wasn't it a placeholder in the Alliance grant as well?
It was.
It was a focus there as
It
well.
was a focus
Yes.
in the Alliance grant. Yep.
Thank you.
And I do appreciate that we're utilizing the grants legitimately. I've always said in the past that I do believe we're doing so, but I'm not sure, maybe I'll rephrase the question because that's a good promotion for the position. But what I'm looking at is saying in the past, and you said we maybe put some aside, but in the past, if I had $100,000 to spend within this program, when all this work was being accomplished with no supervisor there, I must be losing something in the program in order to put this person in place for $100,000.
Well, because the program, I believe if it is Title I, as Dr. may believe it is, that's I believe a $10 million grant. But I know between these grants, the money is fluid, so it's not as if 100,000 is like the vast majority of the grant. And again, we did put that money aside to get this done. But again, internally, we were waiting and for the right time to post it as either a supervisor or a coordinator. So in the current budget cycle, that money has been already earmarked. So it's not taking away from something else that's already been earmarked for this.
And I would say this is a really community outreach, which is a real focus with the State Department. They really look closely at that. And, you know, we also have to be very careful about not supplanting funds, but supplementing. So we are supplementing, you know, the FACE Center and, you know, our outreach. And let's face it, we know through some of the public comment and some discussions within the district that we can do a better job outreaching to parents. And this certainly will put that right out front and center out in the community. We do need help with that, as well as we do with our leader in residence. We certainly can do a better job with that.
And thank you, Superintendent, but that's kind of going to where my next question would have been was, if we're not doing that now, then I don't want to say we're failing, but we're maybe not doing the best job possible in that regard. But I still struggle with a six-figure salary in order to do that. It's grant money. I don't look at that as free money. It came from somewhere. If it didn't come from, say, a corporation, it's far from free money. So I just want to be very cautious on adding an additional six-figure job, whether it's in our operating budget or through a grant.
Right, and just to be clear, grant-funded positions always adjust as the funds are available. So if the funding goes away, then the position does as well.
But my point through this has been, I respect that. My point through this has been, if we're spending in the future $100,000 for a person, I have to believe we're losing somewhere else.
I understand your point.
If we're underspending by that much, the grant would have been deducted by the grant owners a long time ago. So I have great concern that we're going to look at a position that it seems like we've survived in the past without. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hernandez.
I noticed on the position before this one, the other job description in one, bilingualism is preferred. Is bilingualism going to be preferred in this new one, since
It
a
does say
lot of
that.
our parents are,
It does say that.
okay. I didn't see it.
Bilingual, this skill is not required of this leader, but preferred.
Sorry?
It's a fourth bullet from the bottom on the second page.
But it says it's not, skill is not required to this leader, but preferred.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Theriault.
Mr. Schwartz, I assume this is number 4 from our workshop, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that being said, I'm going to raise the same kinds of concerns that I raised at the Personnel Committee. I, too, am very concerned about the $100,000 salary. If it comes from Title I, I guess it's funded year to year to year, infinitum. If it comes from Title V, that funding may go away. But with all due respect to the superintendent, if the funding goes away, this job may not go away because it's going to be mandated by the government, by the federal government, or has already been, or could be. So that being said, whatever happens to this job, whether it's funding from Title I, Title V, or the general fund, we're going to be stuck with a $100,000 salary. Now, I had asked with regard to could this job be changed from a supervisor's category in terms of its job description or title to a coordinator's position, and I seem to remember you saying there are no coordinator's jobs in WTA or SAW. So I can remember discussing this at a former workshop prior, and we had great debate about the salary. And I think Commissioner Van Stone and myself and others kind of take umbrage with every time there is a job created, we're into over $100,000 for the job. I'm sure we can find somebody to do this job for $100,000. But quite honestly, I don't care if you change the title to a coordinator's position and lower the salary to 70. And it should be noted that even if it doesn't come from the general fund, if it comes from Title I or Title V, every single taxpayer put into that fund also, if it's federal dollars. So it's all taxpayer money, no matter where it comes from. But I think my biggest concern is that this is almost mandated. I'm not saying it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. Anytime you get and organize parents and get them involved and get them part of the process, get them included in the process, that's a good thing. But I'm never going to vote for another $100,000 job. So if when it comes to the board, if the board board could think on this and the commissioners can think on this and think about possibly reclassifying this job as a coordinator rather than the supervisor. I don't care if it's not in SAW. I don't care if it's not in WTA. If it's going to be in this other organization that we were talking about, clerical or something else, that's fine. Because as far as I'm concerned, the duties that are outlined here could be done by a coordinator. It's also possible that a SAW person could apply for this, and the entry-level position might not be 100,000, but might be closer to 110 or 115,000. Whoa, now we're talking big bucks here. So I would recommend that we look at this very, very closely with regard to re-identifying the title of the position and calling it a coordinator's position and reducing the price by $25,000. This is exactly what we spoke about in a previous workshop. And yet it shows up on our back door at $100,000 once again. I'm not going to vote for it. I'm not going to vote for it. I say reduce it to coordinator's position, put it in the appropriate union, whatever that union might be, and move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Sweeney?
Darren, a couple of the things that I asked last night, I'll ask again. First of all, the position requires evaluation of personnel,
Correct.
which is part of the reasoning for it being a supervisory position under SOAR, correct?
Well, there are personnel within the Faith Center that aren't always typical of what a SAW member would evaluate, but there are several members within the Faith Center. And as we spoke of last night, we have over 100 administrators in our SAW union. It always happens throughout the year that someone is out for various reasons, and evaluations still need to continue. So many times we look for, we would look for somebody like this, where if they were in SAW, we could use them to cover some of the teacher evaluations, because you have to be not only accredited and in SAW with your 092, but also have passed the teacher evaluation test as well. So not only would they be evaluating the Faith Center and the employees in the Faith Center, but I could also foresee them doing some teacher evaluations when inevitably somebody is out for various reasons.
Okay, and ESA does not designate that that we are required to have this position, or quite frankly, any of the positions in the Faith Center that we currently have. ESA requires that we have community outreach that fits the needs of the community that we serve, correct? So if this grant were to go away and we had to let this position go, we would not be in violation of ESA, but we would have to look at making sure that we again are doing outreach under ESA that fits the community that we serve. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so if this grant were to go away, this position could go away, as well as any other positions that are actually funded under this grant.
Correct, and all the,
Okay.
just the backup literature that you have with you where it says shall under the law, Public Law 114-95, those are just things that we would have to continue to do regardless.
Okay. Okay, so district staff looked at what they wanted our Faith Center and that, what we wanted that community outreach to be. And this is the district's recommendation that this is the best way to coordinate that office to make sure that people are served appropriately.
Correct, and in collaboration with the schools.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Vice President Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Darren, first of all, happy birthday. I give you a lot of credit for being here, because if it was my birthday, I probably would not be here. Having said that, we're never going to satisfy everyone in this district, no matter what you do. There's always something to find that may irk particular individuals. But I can tell you that from listening yesterday at the Personnel Committee and hearing why this position is crucial, I wholeheartedly support it. As an individual who has been community involved for many, many years, and the reason why I got on this board was through community involvement, community engagement. I hear it everywhere I go that this district isn't as friendly as it should be. And so in that Personnel Committee, you discussed how this individual will provide leadership in that particular position that you currently don't have now because it's sort of scattered in terms of the responsibilities, and it's getting done, but there's not a go-to person. The other takeaway was that the position of that status was because this individual would meet with principals that have an extensive experience already dealing with parental involvement, and we want that person to sort of be on that same level playing field. And so having said that, I don't know what salary range will satisfy a qualified, a top candidate that we would hope represent that position. Because from my understanding, this individual, he or her, will be the face of community involvement for the district, correct? And so I support it. It's important. I think the district needs to support it. We talk the talk. Let's walk the walk. And I think this position will allow that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Theriault.
Does anyone else wish to speak for the first time?
You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Schwartz, how many people do you envision this person evaluating?
Well, if, in the Face Center itself, approximately 5 or 6.
5 or 6.
And then if, again, every year, there's a need for WTA evaluations to be done through our SAW membership, and I'm sure this person will be called upon to pick up those in those times.
So this person naturally will have to have an 092.
To take on that responsibility,
To take on
they
that
would,
responsibility.
yes.
But if they didn't take on the responsibility, they wouldn't need that 092, right?
We typically, in any of our offices, anyone that's supervising someone typically has an 092 at that level.
Okay. So you're very aware of the makeup of the system with regard to the principals of the high school and the 3 high school vice principals, and those high school vice principals do the evaluation of staff.
Correct.
Same characteristics of the middle school, a main principal, 3 house principals that do the evaluation of their staff. And then down at the elementary level, we have a principal and 1 supervising vice principal, possibly a teaching vice principal that does not evaluate staff, but SVPs do, principals do. So I think there's plenty of cadre with regard to the evaluation of staff. But that being said, I will revert to my original statement that I think all of these responsibilities could still be carried out by a coordinator. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz, and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you. Now we have Principal Goby and instructional leader, Mr. White.
Good evening, Dr., Madam President, Vice President, Commissioners. Thank you for having us here this evening. I have with me 2 teachers from Crosby High School, Rachel Spagnoletti and Eileen Stowe, who are science teachers in the building. And they are here this evening to present an idea for a summer enrichment experience for our students at Crosby High School.
Hello. Good evening. So we're proposing, sorry.
Better? Okay, we're proposing a STEAM program where we incorporate science, technology, engineering, art, and math, and we'd like to work together and have students come in for the summer, and we're going to plant a garden, and on top of it's a tranquility garden, so it's more than just a garden. We'd also have a space where they'd have a labyrinth. They'd create kinesthetically their own recycled sculptures in the garden, and hopefully a water fountain. And our future goal is to have it become a wildlife habitat and someplace for the students to reflect. And I'm going to pass it over.
Where would this be located?
We have a courtyard that our library overlooks, and that's the ideal location where we're thinking it would be right now.
Thank you.
So also through the program, we're going to be developing many skills for our students, of which those include literacy skills, specifically their science literacy. They're going to be needing to research what plants are native, which ones are invasive, things like designs of bird houses and which species those are better fit for. They're also going to be designing and creating this all themselves. So that's going to involve developing their engineering practices, including designing and creating, and also their math skills by measuring and using materials in our labs to develop all the pieces of the garden.
So it's an interdisciplinary type approach.
Interdisciplinary, yes.
Very good, thank you.
Science, art, and technology education departments. We're proposing a 12-day summer program, 4.5 hours per day. Busing and breakfast and lunch would be provided to the students as well.
Any questions, Commissioner? Commissioner Vanstone?
Well, you know when it's STEAM or STEM or whatever extra letter we put in there, you have me. You had me at ST. However, and this is a kind of unique one, it really is. But over at Wilby, we have this very unique greenhouse. Will we be taking advantage of that? And for those that don't know, it's probably the most unique greenhouse I've ever seen. It's got an aqua effect to it. It's really a tremendous little building that is way underutilized. Will we try to introduce that to this program as well?
In time, we will be able to introduce parts of that because we're using Title I that's related to turnaround schools. It has to be school-centric, school-based. So as we plan things for the future, we may be able to figure out how we could incorporate and even incorporate the program also at Wilby.
Okay, great. That was my only question. Thank you. Great job.
I have a question. Will the students be receiving any credit for this?
We have not proposed any credit.
No, I was
for
just
that,
curious
yeah.
if it could be considered part of an elective, that I wasn't sure if there was any integration of curriculum.
There's definitely integration of curriculum, but it isn't a fully designed course to say that has been approved by the board
Okay.
to receive credit at this
I
time.
see that in the future.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Yes,
Commissioner Theriault.
Yeah, just two questions. Cost and funding.
right. Title I turnaround funding, and the cost, approximately $13,000 would cover the salaries for the teachers, transportation, and materials for the students, approximately 48 students.
13,000?
Yes,
How many students?
48.
Money well spent.
Thank you.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing this garden.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Louise Brown?
Oh, no,
I'm sorry.
you're going water next.
Water?
Yeah, water next.
Okay, we're going to change the agenda because, if you don't mind,
Number
we're going to go to number 17.
Yeah, water testing, yeah. And then she's up after. She said that's fine. Sorry.
17.
17?
That would be fine. The water was before.
Good evening, Madam President,
Good
Commissioners.
evening, Mr. Brenker.
For the record, I'm with Superintendent of Water Department, Mr. Carver.
Good evening, welcome.
Good evening.
We've had a cooperative program since July of last year between the Water Department, the Public Health Department, and our school inspector's office to inspect the water in each of the schools. We've run through approximately 80% of those tests, and we've had no evidence of any lead above any standard that was necessary for action. However, as I'm sure you all know, recently we had an issue with 2 schools, Walsh and Wendell Cross. And in those 2 schools, the results came back from the state in March that they were above, so we did a retest, which is the normal procedure. The testing is done by the water department. You want to describe what you did?
Sure. Yeah, in conjunction with the education department, our chemists go out and take the actual samples. They're expert at taking the samples. They take the samples according to EPA protocol. The samples are taken first thing in the morning, usually between 6 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. Before the school actually opens, because you need to take a first draw sample. That's the water that's been sitting in the mains or in the pipes for an extended period of time with no use. So you're sure that first draw sample, you're getting that type of water, the stagnant water, that has any chance of interacting with any of the plumbing or any of the fixtures that may contain particulates that could contribute to lead in the water. So that's the protocol that they follow.
Thank you.
Once the samples are collected, they're turned over to the Waterbury Public Health Department, and they forward them to the State Department of Public Health, which are the experts in lead testing and lead remediation. At this point, in March, we shut off the 4 water fountains at Walsh School and ordered new water fountains advertised as lead-free according to the federal law. They were installed in early May of this year. The water department did the testing immediately thereafter. Samples were sent to the state, and 2 of those water fountains came back above the standard. At Wendell Cross, there were new faucets installed, lead-free faucets. We have the packaging to show they are. And the faucet, the water in the faucet that came from the teacher's lounge and the nurse's bathroom came back above the standard. So we've instructed the nurse to let the water run for approximately 2 minutes, because every flush sample we've taken, including these samples at Walsh and Wendell Cross, came back with lead non-detectable. It was only the initial stagnant test that had any lead that was able to be measured. And the food service director has sent up water both to Walsh and to Wendell Cross. So they have water on hand that they can use in the meantime in the teacher's lounge for Wendell Cross, and also at Walsh for children's use.
So if I may, you said that the fountains at Walsh School are brand new, lead-free?
Brand new.
So what were we doing to find out why the results were the way they were?
It's a good question. Thank you. What we're doing is following the guidelines of the State Department of Public Health. Today they made some recommendations about retesting, that we should reconnect the fountains and take another test. Right now the fountains are disconnected. They cannot be used. There are also signage posted, do not use, but they're all shut down anyway. So we will take, instead of 2 samples, 6 samples in each site. And we have the guidelines that were sent to us by the city's chief sanitarian this afternoon, and we will coordinate a meeting to set up between the water department, public health, and education, and we'll develop the protocol for the testing for next week in each of those 2 sites. And then we'll measure again.
And one other question, you mentioned that, and I'm really very happy that you've been proactive over the last year, and the team is working on it, looking at this, because lead paint poisoning is very serious, especially with little ones. I mean, I think we're okay, but we want to make sure that there's no hazard. So when are we finished? When will we reach the 100% mark in terms of investigation?
At the end of this school year.
Okay, so like at the end of June, I mean, so.
The last test was scheduled, I believe, June 20th.
Great, okay, thank you. Commissioner Hernandez and then Commissioner Theriault.
I went over to Walsh the very next day, actually, and I was a little concerned, even though it's only 2 water fountains. I saw some children drinking out of one of the other fountains. So my thing is if my child is going there and there's 2 fountains that have lead, I would not want them to drink out of any fountain. So as far as I'm concerned, they all need to be shut down until the tests are done to ensure that there's no residue anywhere else. I had a problem with seeing kids using the one as you enter into the building, but unable to use the ones by the principal's office, which is, I'm assuming, one of the ones that tested positive.
Yes, it is,
with
the one
lead.
near room number 3, I believe, right?
So I'm just, asking that all fountains be cut off.
Okay.
And just let us deliver water to the schools until the last testing is done, just to be safe.
All right, I think that's, to be safe, that's a good idea. We'll shut the water off tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Theriault.
The water is safe unless it's your kid drinking the water. Then it's not safe. If it's not safe for one kid, it's not safe for anybody in the building. When the school is actually operating, I can see like over the summer where the school may not be operating and the water might get stagnant. But this is after 9 months in the school year. Water in the nurse's room has been running, I'm sure, constantly. Kids have been taking that water and using it to take pills. I'm sure the teachers were very upset, thinking that they're drinking contaminated water. People that are older like myself, well, we may only have 10 or 15 years to go. But those young teachers, they got 60, 70 years to go. Certainly don't want our teachers contaminated with lead any more than we want our kids. So I kind of take umbrage with the remark, and I appreciate you being proactive and going after this, but I kind of take umbrage with the remarks. Don't worry, it's okay, the water's safe. It's not a danger to anybody, because it is. If it's a danger to one kid, one staff member, it's a danger to every kid in the building. It's my first thing. Next thing is, many of our buildings here are well over 100 years old. You can put 12 new bubblers in. Problem is that many of the piping, much of the piping in these older buildings is lead piping. That's the way they were built at the time. If you go down to Hopeville, the whole school is full of lead piping. So you can replace the bubblers, but you can't kind of eliminate the source of the problem. And maybe that piping, I don't know enough about it, and I don't pretend to know enough about it, maybe that piping doesn't bleach out. But it certainly did bleach out in Detroit, didn't it?
Detroit, no, Commissioner.
What was
No,
the...
You're referring to Flint, Michigan?
Clint, Michigan, yeah.
Flint,
okay.
right. Well, Flint is much different for 2 reasons. First, it was a switch in the water supply.
Yeah.
The water had been supplied by the Detroit River, and it had been safe for 20 more years. Flint was undergoing an economic issue. They decided to switch their supply to the Flint River, which was a source, actually a recipient of contaminated waste from industrial plants.
Okay.
However, there's an additional issue with Flint, and I'd ask Superintendent Carver to answer that. Corrosion?
Sure. One of the main issues in Flint that they had was they never practiced corrosion control. In the state of Connecticut, with water treatment plants, it's a regulation. As part of that regulation, we're required to do lead and copper sampling every year. And this started many years ago, before I came, 23 years ago. Since that time, since I have been here in undergoing that program, we've since received what's called reduced monitoring status based on our compliance with the lead and copper regulation. We've always added the corrosion control at the water treatment plant. It was state-of-the-art when it was built, and it continues to be. We've always been in compliance with every regulation. As you may or may not know, we're highly regulated by the state, more than bottled water. Bottled water is regulated by Food and Drug Administration. We're regulated by the Department of Public Health, who's regulated by EPA. So all of our reports are all sent to the State Health Department. They review them. They come down to the city every single year and do what's called a sanitary survey. They go through source to tap, from our reservoirs, through our treatment plant, through our pump stations and tanks and distribution system. And then they issue us any of their findings, recommendations. But getting back to the Flint, Michigan issue, that was one of their major problems, is when they switched sources, they used a different treatment plant that hadn't been online for years, and they didn't practice corrosion control, and that's one of the main causes of lead leaching in water.
Okay, I'm glad I used the wrong name because we got a good explanation.
One more point, Commissioner. The piping in Walsh School is half-inch copper tubing.
In all the schools.
In Walsh. I was talking about Walsh.
And we still have lead, and we have copper tubing in the building.
Well, at Walsh, the copper, I don't know about the other schools yet. We're looking into it.
Is it Mr. Carver?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Carver, for that excellent explanation. I will put my head on my pillow at night and know that Waterbury is a lot safer. I can remember as a kid, Waterbury, before the filtration plant was built, Waterbury had skull and crossbones on its water. So it's reassuring to see you and professionals like you doing due diligence and assuring the public that our water is safe.
Thank you.
So that, number one, compliments to all the people that work in the water department and the water plant and filter out the water and provide chlorine so that our teeth are also good too, right?
Correct.
I just want to digress a second, because it seems as though every time we have a crisis, everything's all right, but everything's not all right. Maybe we should be doing this testing on the schools twice a year instead of once. But I want to digress a second, going back to Walsh, which was one of the schools that was identified. I can remember some years ago, 3, 4 years ago, where Walsh had a mold problem. And when they had the mold problem, the Board of Education finally decided to investigate it through Paul Guidon, and they came down and they looked around, and all you had to do was look, and you could see what looked like mold because it was blue and green and orange. They said, we're not sure it's mold. So they came back. They did an air quality check on the outside of the building, air quality check on the inside of the building, and the room that was most contaminated with the mold, guess what? They couldn't find the key to get in and test the room. Couldn't find the key. Nobody had a key. They said there was no mold at Walsh, but the report came through with various forms of different kinds of molds in a high concentration. And I'm not saying that the whole thing was covered up. What I'm saying is that they didn't do due diligence for the kids and the staff. After I left and developed bronchial pneumonia and bronchial asthma from being exposed to these things, there were at least 6 or 8 teachers that got deathly ill with the same thing. I finally had to quit my job at Walsh. But my point is this: how about all the other kids down there that had to be exposed to this? And why don't we just come clean and say there's mold there, and you need to be cognizant of it, and you need to take precautions against it? You have been completely honest with us, and I admire that. And thanks for, I'm glad I said Detroit instead of Flint, because we got a much better explanation. But that being said, I hope in the future when we have contamination problems like this, we're open to the public, and I know we sent out an alert, but I don't know why we didn't send an alert out in March. I don't know why we didn't close the water supply down, sooner. Because I wouldn't want my kid drinking lead water. I wouldn't want my daughter, who's a teacher, drinking lead water. And I don't want any one of the staff members here drinking lead water. And as board members, we go and we drink water occasionally too. So that being said, thank you very much for your enlightenment of our, actually, we have some of the best water in all of New England. And they say that the next war will not be fought over oil, it will be fought over water. So that being said, well, I guess we're in the crosshairs.
Thank you. Commissioner Sweeney.
Mr. Bricker, I just want to be clear. How many bubblers were replaced at Walsh?
4.
And that was done in March?
In March, they were shut off, and we ordered the new ones.
In March, they were shut off, and you
Yes.
ordered 4 new ones?
Yes, it
That
took a while
were
to get them.
installed in March?
No, they were installed in May, early May.
So between March and May, 4 bubblers at Welch were not working?
Right. The reason why they were ordered is that the local plumbing supplies don't keep them on the shelf because they would stay there too long. They had to be ordered from the manufacturer ELKAY.
Okay, I understand that part. So 4 bubblers were shut down in March
Yes,
and were not operational until May, when the new bubblers were installed.
yes.
And then in May, we tested the water at the new bubblers, and 2 of 4 failed.
There was a higher
At
level.
the stagnant test, I understand it was
Yes.
at the stagnant test. And that same test was done later, beyond the stagnant,
It's called a flush
but
test.
on the same day.
Yes,
On the same day.
Yes.
So we tested it in the morning at the stagnant level, and then later in the day, tested the same bubblers, and they passed that second test, but failed.
no, excuse me, they were tested at the same time. First is a stagnant test, first thing in the morning.
Right, at each sample location, there's 2 tests that are done. The first test is the stagnant test. That's the first, called the first draw sample. Immediately after that sample, you take a flush sample where you let the line run for a period of time, typically until the water gets colder. You can time it, they say 20, 30 seconds according to EPA, but depending on the pipe schematic, the layout of the pipe, it may be much longer in a school, maybe up to 3 to 5 minutes. At that time, that's when the second sample is taken.
Okay. So the pipes that are coming in from the outside to those bubblers are the same pipes at all 4 bubblers, to whatever point they then deviate to the bubbler itself, correct?
No, not necessarily. They're the same type pipe, but it's not the same pipe that feeds all 4.
Okay.
It's like electricity where wires go to different parts of a building. It's the same with piping for water.
Okay.
There's a line with diagrams.
So the variable for the 2 bubblers that failed could be either the bubblers themselves or the line that comes in?
Yes.
Okay. So in the course of investigation, do we look at that to find out if that's the fail? Because, I mean, it sounds like we're just going to retest them and kind of hope that they pass.
No.
As opposed to finding out exactly what caused them to fail in the first place.
We would like to find out what caused them to fail, yes. However, we can replace the bubblers, that's easy.
Yeah.
We can do that, of course. But these are brand-new, manufactured in 2016, that meet the standard, the current standard of what's called lead-free, but it's really not totally lead-free. There's 2.5% allowable in the construct of that unit itself. So we just did replace it. We can do that again, but we'd like to try and find out what the cause is first.
Very good.
And we receive guidelines from the state, what they suggest we should follow, so we'll do that next week first.
Okay, but if you do that retest next week and everything passes, then do you go back and still look for why it failed?
One of the suggestions, Commissioner, is that we flop the bubblers. We take the 2 that passed, put them with the 2 that failed, take the 2 that failed, put them with the 2 that passed, to see if that would indicate a different result. The difficulty is, as Commissioner Theriault pointed out, they're old buildings, and these pipes are not easily accessible. They're in these block walls. So if we were to try to get and dig out all the piping in the building, to look at all the joints, to see what's in each joint, where the pipes come together, it would be a very expensive and very tedious task to do. So at this point, we'd like to continue to follow the guidelines that the state's provided, with some ingenuity on our own part.
Okay.
And we expect to meet tomorrow, the three departments, again, to go through plans for next week.
Okay, and in the case of Wendell Cross, you said those fixtures were actually, those were changed as well? When were they changed?
They were changed recently. They're also lead-free. They're bought, advertised as lead-free under
Okay.
the federal law.
Okay, and we had 2 fixtures that failed, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so again, I guess my question would be the same as, you know, if we go back next week and we test them again and they pass, I hesitate to have it left at, okay, now they pass. I really would like some investigation as to why they failed in the first place.
Yes, I would like also to know exactly why.
Okay.
One thing, please don't misunderstand the 2 tests. One is stagnant, one is flush.
Yep.
In every flush sample in this district, there has been no detection of lead.
Correct.
So
Yes,
that's
I
an
do
important
understand
fact
that,
to
yeah.
remember.
Yep.
And that's once anybody runs the water, then you have a flush test. So the first person, the next people that come in, it's a flush
Yep.
test.
And again, I understand that, but I'm curious as to why that stagnant failed.
Believe me, we are too.
Okay.
Very curious.
Commissioner Van Stone?
Thank you, Madam President. To the points that Commissioner Sweeney was making is, I guess there's always a chance of whatever for our root cause. Is the city infrastructure, which is the source of this water, potentially the cause?
It's very unlikely, Commissioner. As I stated before, the city has practiced corrosion control. We continue to do what's called water quality parameters, even though we're not required to do it. We're on reduced monitoring. We don't have to do it. We do it once a week at various sites that are designated by the state throughout the city. Actually, one of the sites is Rotella Middle School, and we just tested there recently. I can say unequivocally over the past several years, well, longer than several years, those tests have not wavered whatsoever when it comes to the corrosion control parameters, such as the pH. These are a couple of things that they look at. pH of a 7 is called neutral. Above is basic, below is acidic. Our goal for the water leaving the water treatment plant is between a 7 and a 7.5. That's been consistent in every water quality parameter throughout the city. Also, the phosphate level, which is #1 for corrosion control. What that chemical does, the phosphate, orthophosphate, puts a coating on the interior of the pipelines throughout the city. That's chemical that's added 24/7 for the last 23 years, well, and beyond, before I was here as well. So it's very unlikely that it came from the source being the water coming into the schools. Again, that water is tested daily, leaving the water treatment plant, and every day throughout the city by our chemists. We have 25 representative sample sites in the city, and the chemists are at 7 or 8 of those sites every single day. And the other potential source of lead is the fixtures themselves. And with one important point, too, that should be brought up, I think, for everybody to know is the maximum contaminant level goal for lead is 0. There is no level for lead. It's either 0 or it's not. So anything above that requires action. In the water system case itself, if you have a level above your 90th percentile, that's 90th percentile for all the samples that you take during that course of sampling, treatment technique is involved. So the state would come in and say, are you practicing corrosion control? Yes, no, maybe. Yes, we are, check off that box, but we've never gotten there. The other part of that is also with the, along with the corrosion control is the pH, as I stated before, and the phosphate. Those are 2 critical components. So with the schools, when you're going through to give kudos to the education department, they are following EPA's protocol for lead in schools, reducing lead in schools. And if you do have a sample that comes back higher than 0, it's going in to try to find what the cause is, and it's basically called remediation. Where in the water systems, it's treatment, In buildings, it's remediation, trying to find out the cause and trying to rectify that.
I appreciate that. And the reason I asked is, we're talking the school, which is what we do. However, if I live across the street from Wendell Cross, or I live across the street from Walsh, as certain as we can be, we don't have to give out any warnings to the people in the neighborhood. That's why I asked about infrastructure.
That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Therio.
Yeah, just two quick follow-up questions. Are there any filters that can be used to filter out lead?
Yes,
There are.
there are.
So will we explore those on our buildings to filter out some of the water, or at the base where the water comes in, at the water meter, maybe?
That's,
Yes, we will.
Okay. Thank you. And my second question is, inasmuch as Walsh School has a problem and Wendell Cross has a problem, would that mean that the neighborhoods in East Mountain and the neighborhood at Walsh School, those surrounding houses, might have the same kinds of problems? And should the neighborhood people explore that, or is there any way they can sample the water and bring it into somebody to have it evaluated?
There are private laboratories that do testing of lead. There's a dollar amount attached to that. But again, our sampling, we have I believe it's 63 representative sites, and they have to be a cross-section of our pressure zones in Waterbury. So we have low service, high service, and tank service. And where reduced monitoring means taking 50 samples every 3 years, we're pretty much on a 2-year cycle now instead of 3, just because of the way the years fall and the other samples that we're required to take. But again, it's of all the samples of the lead and copper rule, which we have to follow, they have all come below the action level in the 90th percentile. And I'll just make one other note. When we do find a sample in the distribution system that is higher than 0, as a courtesy, we'll go back and retest that for the homeowner. And they, for whatever reason, they always come back non-detectables. Sometimes you got to remember that the testing equipment that's doing the test, usually atomic absorption units, they're machines, electronic machines, and from time to time they do hiccup as well. I'm not saying that's the case here, but we have seen that in the past as well. We've sent in dual samples as well, and sometimes you'll see a discrepancy in numbers.
On another occasion, I'll ask you about the replacing of the pipes citywide, but not tonight. Thank you.
That's ongoing.
Okay. Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to the continued discussion and the discoveries, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Louise Brown,
Thank you, Mr. Carver.
number 5.
Steve Strand and John Reed.
Steve Strand and Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Their names were not here.
Yep, I know.
Good evening. We
Good
have our
evening.
famous Perkins grant.
Yes. I'm glad you said famous and not infamous. It's really a wonderful grant and a great opportunity for the
Yeah.
city and our career and technical ed programs. I'm happy to be here tonight with Steve Strand and John Reed to share with you the proposal that we put together with input not only from them, but also from our CTE teachers throughout the district and the high school principals at the high schools involved in Perkins. Those schools are Crosby, Kennedy, Wilby, and the Waterbury Career Academy. The grant application is due at the end of the month, and historically, we've come to you for your approval in advance of submitting the proposal. The proposal includes a funding request in the same amount as the final Perkins allocation for this year. That's $417,907. That's based on the instructions from the State Department of Education to prepare our application with that amount in mind, knowing that ultimately when they finalize their allocations for 2017-18, that number might go up or down slightly. So we've included in the proposal funds for professional development for our CTE teachers, funds to allow our teachers to conduct curriculum revision in accordance with the plan that Steve has for that, for the district as a whole. Funds for supplies and equipment that the teachers will utilize in their classrooms directly with students. And funding for student trips that enhance their educational experience in the CTE areas. In Waterbury, when we say career and technical education, that generally boils down to departments in our high schools known as business, family and consumer sciences, technology education, and allied health. So each, in the rather lengthy proposal that we shared with you, you can see that there are two components to the proposal. The first part is a budget narrative that describes in significant detail each item to be purchased by each school and what the purpose of that is. You should know that each of these items has been vetted by John and Steve. They have approved these as being consistent with their targeted priorities for CTE improvements in the coming school year. The second part of the application is called the Continuous Improvement Plan, and it includes data from our CTE programs from this year, as well as a plan for improvements going forward. So with that background, I would invite you to share with us any questions you have, and hopefully we can answer those all for you.
No, thank you. It's pretty self-evident. I mean, we've seen this before us, and I think the program and the allocation speak for themselves. So thank you very much.
I do just want to add, Louise is a gem, and
Yay, Louise.
she does great work with this, and hopefully we've streamlined the process for her. We work very hard at making sure that we keep up with Louise's deadlines and so forth, and make no bones about it. Without Louise, we'd be in a totally different spot.
Thank you. Thank you. We think you're a gem, too.
Thank you so much.
Okay, number 6. Who's here from the
Linda
food?
Francis.
Linda here?
Yep.
Okay.
And Adam.
Linda Francis
And Adam.
and Adam?
They have two. They're doing two in a row.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So the first item on the agenda we have is a contract for a new point-of-sale system for the 30 public schools. We have a system that's been in place now for
roughly, it's been in place for roughly 10 years, but you know, maybe a little bit less than that. The system itself has worked relatively okay, however, not to the best of our standards when it comes to some of the ancillary aspects of the program. When speaking about inventory and other aspects of the position.
Could you please speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
When talking about other aspects of the program that we need, inventory, monitoring of meals served and things of that nature.
nutrition analysis, right?
Exactly. So we went out to, we asked for an RFP to replace that system in order to see exactly what was out there and if there was a better way to do what we're doing. And this new company came out. Our current company did not place an RFP, first of all. And the new company came out and seems to do everything we're asking for as a full system as opposed to add-ons, which is what our current system was doing, which was, I think, part of the problem with what we were having. It started out as POS system, and then it came in as an inventory system add-on, and just a bunch of add-ons as it went through, and I don't think they all spoke together properly, which made the system more cumbersome than it probably needed to be.
So we received 2 quotes one from the Harris Company and one from the Heartland Company. And we liked the Harris Company based on the presentation that they gave, and it was the low bidder as well.
Any questions? Commissioner Hernandez.
Hi, I think you guys are ready for me today.
It might be.
I noticed that in the contract, part of the contract stated that we will be paying for lodging and transportation. How many people is this for and how long?
Well, it's for the duration of the implementation process. That is yet to be determined, dependent on when the contract is obviously signed. The system will be up and running as per contract before the start of school. The person who, or the team that is in place to do the implementation will be there through the start of school in case there's any issues with go live. We have somebody on site to help us with that. They ensured us that there will be between 1 and 3 people on site, dependent on our needs. We're going to do a train the trainer system to keep that cost down. That cost that you see is a high estimate, dependent on us with a high
It's the
need.
worst case scenario.
Yeah,
Worst
exactly.
okay.
So, but there will be between 4 and 5 remote people dedicated to us for go live and implementation prior to that as well. So we have we have 1 point person that will be on site for the entire implementation process, and then as needed, there will be additional staff there.
And this contract is 5 years.
Correct.
So, say after year 2, are they obligated to come back?
No, this is just for implementation.
Just for implementation. Okay, so if something goes wrong, then,
We have, well, the service, that will be our remote service. We won't be flying anybody in unless there's a catastrophe, but that
Okay.
would be something we would obviously bring before the board.
okay. Thanks.
Commissioner Van Stone.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, Commissioner Hernandez noted it's a 5-year contract, yet I note the warranty is only 1 year.
Correct.
So anything, materials, workmanship, installation, at day 370, it's all on us, even though we have 4 years left with this company?
Correct, but this is, keep in mind, this is software. It's not, there's not a lot of hardware that we'll be purchasing through the company. The main hardware that we're purchasing through the company, the industry standard, is 1 year with pin pads. Those are what the students use to type in their ID numbers. There is a lot to go wrong there, and we have actually less than that on our pin pads that we're buying now. So.
I guess for some of the hardware, I understand that, one, it'll probably be obsolete in 1 year, so it's really not much to warranty afterward. But the workmanship, the installation, like if they build something and put it in our system and, for lack of a better term, they jerry-rig it to make it work, and then all of a sudden we realize that might not have been the best way to do it 18 months in, what is the repercussions at that point?
I think what we need to look at is that we're looking at more like buying, this company is more like buying a Microsoft product. We have a year warranty in that it will communicate with our network and these other instances. The program itself is a tried and true program. It will work in terms of it speaking to itself, maintaining inventory, collecting data from the POS systems.
So when they're talking about installation, not to cut you off, you're talking about they're going to install software onto a machine. They're not going to be
Correct.
running wires, they're not going to be doing conduits.
There's nothing like that, no.
All right, so their installation is essentially uploading a program
Yeah,
onto
and
some...
making sure on that particular local machine it's working.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. Have we done anything with this company before?
No,
but
not to our knowledge.
We did check references, though.
And those came back stellar?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they have.
Okay. Anyone locally using them?
South Windsor, I believe, is installing this year.
But Manchester has it in place
Manchester does have it
currently,
in place.
and that's who I spoke with the director in Manchester.
We're familiar with Manchester a little bit, right?
It is Nick Aldi.
That's who I spoke with.
Yeah, and he's a reliable source.
All right.
Is Hartford using it?
Hartford is not, no.
Lonnie
Nick
Burt?
in Manchester, and then it was South Windsor that was. that
Yeah,
will be
I would
implementing over
trust
the
Nick.
summer. but Nick spoke very highly of it.
Yeah, then I would trust that
And
the
their
had to
parent
come from
company
Pat
is
Brooks.
a well-respected parent company as well.
Thank you both. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Commissioner Theriault.
I'm sure when something is 10 years old, in this day and age in the computer industry, that's like going back to the Stone Age. So I think my question would be, what new information and using this new technology will you gain, obviously, to make your job easier in terms of collating the data and so forth? So I would imagine you're going to get a lot more data out of this system than you got out of the old system.
Right.
Yeah, that's my first question. And my second question is kind of a footnote, just as a kind of informational note to the general public. Maybe when you're done with this question, Linda could explain why all the kids in Waterbury get free lunch. Because some parents say, well, how come everybody gets a free lunch? I said, you know, it's a good question. I think I know the answer, but I'll let you explain that, okay? So first question, the new technology, information systems, software, what new information do you hope to gain? Thank you.
Well, in terms of new information, we're looking for better ways of compiling and being able to analyze current data that we are gaining. As you said, Commissioner, it is, when you look at something that's designed it had to have been designed over 10 years ago, and I'm sure they've done their updates, the current company we have. However, they're trying to pigeonhole it into something that they already have. This system will allow us to tell them straight away, this is what we need, so we need the data this way. This obviously came into place before I was here, but it was information that we were just happy to get any information prior. Now we're saying, well, it's great that we have this information, but it's not really the way we want it. We want to be able to disseminate the information not only by a district or not only by a school, but both ways, and let them speak to each other. What happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? Allow us to put in parameters that will facilitate projection and other issues as well.
Thank you.
And the community eligibility provision is funded through USDA. This will be our third year on the program, and it allows every student in the city of Waterbury that attends a public school to be able to eat for free, whether it's breakfast, lunch. We currently have the after-school snack program and supper as well, and summer. And what they looked at is the amount of kids that were receiving primarily a direct certification from the state. They took that figure, there was a multiplying factor involved. We came up with a percentage, and that percentage became our reimbursement percentage that we receive every month. So basically, that's where we are right now. We're coming up on a year where we'll be audited by both the state and USDA, and they will again look at that. And I just received a memo today from the state regarding Medicaid, and Dr. you and I had spoken about that. It looks like that will also be part of it. So I assume that our numbers will continue to rise based on that. And that I just received.
What if we
from the
have
state.
it?
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
That's the
Right.
hope.
Yeah, we're not really sure, and it just came out today, and obviously there's more clarification to be clear, but that's where we are now. So it's the community eligibility provision that allows all the students to eat at no charge in the city of Waterbury.
I just have one third question. I noticed some of our schools have the kitchen facilities. And sometime in the past, I know you've looked at some of the other schools with the opportunity of putting in kitchen facilities, which I don't know enough about food preparation, but it seems that the food that's cooked in the kitchen seems to be, on an average, a little bit better and wholesome, rather than the pre-cooked meals that are thrown in the warmers and presented to the children. Have you looked at any opportunities for creating new kitchens throughout the district? I know you did some in the past, and
Yeah.
they turned out very well.
Right. Actually, what we've been talking about is the possibility of a central kitchen for the city. Right. So we're going to start looking at properties where we can actually prepare our own food, and this would allow, obviously, a big savings from the company that is now, that we're purchasing our pre-plate food from, and certainly would allow for a fresher product and more variety.
It'll give us more control, quality control, and preparation control as well.
And we'll make sure the kids eat their vegetables.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As usual, Mrs. France, you do a fantastic job. There's never a problem in the
Well, I have great
service.
help. I'm very fortunate. I appreciate that.
Well, there's never a problem in the food service department, and we get nothing but accolades, and you constantly generate a profit in your department. So
Thank you.
kudos to you and your staff.
And I think you're up for the next one, number 7.
Yes. So this is the healthy food certification, which I believe we're on our 10th or 11th year of doing the healthy food certification, which basically, this will be a 10th year next school year. What the state asks us to do is to come before the Board of Education and receive approval to continue on serving the healthy food items that are in both the beverage list and the snack list that's located on the Connecticut State Department of Education website. And these healthy snack items must be served through a la carte items in the cafeterias, vending machines, and fundraisers in school stores. So what I ask, please, is for your approval to be able to continue on with that. With the certification, it allows us to receive an additional close to $250,000 a year. They base it on 10 cents per meal that's served the prior school year, throughout the school year. So every meal served times 10 cents, that's how that number is derived, and it's approximately $250,000 a year currently that we're getting from the state of Connecticut. We hope that continues. And again, I'd like to ask the board, please, for your approval on that.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Number 8, Interim Supervisor Baldwin. Is Elaine here? Just, okay, just me,
So she
just
has quite a
Melissa?
few.
Yeah.
8, 9, 10.
Yeah, 8, 9, 10.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
All right.
I'm going to go as quickly as I can in the interest of time. Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
The Department of Special Education requests your approval of 2 contracts for the provision of speech and language therapy services for the Waterbury School District, and 1 contract for the provision of occupational and physical therapies. The request for proposal process was completed for all 3 contracts. I'll go over each one. There were 12 vendors submitted for speech and language therapy services. Our department formed a committee who reviewed the proposals and conducted phone interviews with some proposers, and other proposers came in. The committee consisted of special education supervisors Roberta Abell, Monica O'Neill, and Sharon Walsh. Thereafter, each member of the committee evaluated and scored each proposal. The committee then reviewed the hourly rates submitted by each proposer. EBS, the first, number 8, has a competitive hourly wage, which they have kept the same over the 3-year period. They were awarded 4,200 hours of the contract, and tax clearance was received for all of the all of the contracts at this time.
Any questions? Are any of these new contractors?
No, we have used all of them in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want me to go on to number 9?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, it was for speech and language therapies. The committee reviewed the hourly rates for each proposal. We have used Access Rehab in the past. One of the things that we changed a little bit this year was Access Rehab's hourly rate went up in years 2 and 3. So we decreased the number of hours that we awarded to Access and increased the hours given to EBS. EBS's hourly rate was lower than Access over the 3 years. However, in the past, EBS has had limited success in providing a large number of speech and language therapists. So, and Access really has been better at providing us with the people that we need. So we had to look at that as part of this process.
Number 10?
Okay. 14 vendors submitted proposals for occupational and physical therapy. Again, we formed a committee, reviewed all the proposals, and conducted interviews. The committee consisted of special education supervisors Amy Sims, Robert Delaney, and Lisa Higgins. They evaluated and scored all proposals. They reviewed the hourly rates by each proposer. Access Rehab Center did not have the highest hourly rate and kept its hourly rate for next year the same as the current year that it's in. Based on the bid proposals, Access Rehab's cost proposal was average compared to others. They did score the highest on in the RFP as well. And we awarded, with your approval, of course, the total contract to Access Rehab for these services.
Okay, moving right along.
Okay. So the next two are amendments. I respectfully request your review and approval of the above referenced Amendment 2 to agreement between the City of Waterbury and American School for the Deaf. The amendment enlarges the amount by $24,970.75 of the agreement with American School for the Deaf as a result of an increase in the number of students with disabilities being placed there by the Waterbury Public Schools since March of 2015.
Okay, number 12.
I respectfully request your review and approval of the above referenced Amendment 2 to agreement between the City of Waterbury and Specialized Education of Connecticut, also known as High Roads. The amendment enlarges the amount by $131,552.05 of the agreement with High Roads as a result of an increase in the number of students since January of 2015.
I have a question on number 12. Are these residential placements or day?
They're day placements.
Both 11 and 12?
Both are,
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Van Stone?
Thank you, Madam President. Similar question. This increase, is it driven by students that have relocated to Waterbury?
So it's happened since January of 2015, so it's over the course of the last 2.5 years. This is the end of our contract, so this was an increase of approximately 4 students. So it could have been students that moved in or students that were already there when their parents moved here from another city and we could not provide services for them in district.
We talk about a lot how when students move into a district or our students move into another district, that district is supposed to follow the student and help with the cost.
Right.
So is that not happening in these cases?
I'm not sure I understand your, so say a student moves in.
Moves into our district and their home base is Town X.
Oh,
I thought Town X was supposed to follow the student and pay for those services.
It depends on the nexus. So if DCF has moved that child and another district is the nexus, they would pay for that. I'm talking about when parents move into Waterbury with their children and they're at this school.
I understand, but and maybe I'm confused, but in the past, we've always talked about basically the money following the student, where we pay out when our students move on, even if it's a DCF placement. I'm a little surprised in this case why, if it's a move-in student, why we're not looking for the other district to support us in this funding.
This isn't that.
There are.
These were Waterbury Public School placed children
Right.
at High Roads and at ASD. There was one student that was placed there in the past year.
All right, maybe I'll make it a little easier. So their home district is
Right.
Waterbury?
Correct.
They didn't come from
Oh, no.
somewhere else?
No, there are.
No, we're responsible for them.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry.
Good question. Commissioner Van Stone?
Thank you, Madam President. And I guess, in retrospect, this kind of applies to all the ones you just spoke about, Melissa. I saw most of the contract dates begin July 1. But I'll be honest with you, with a 1,000-page backup, I was having trouble finding some of the other beginning dates. Is July 1 essentially the beginning for all of these contracts?
For
And
the
amendments?
first three, correct. Yes, the amendments are for up to June 30th of this school year, but the first three were for July 1st, and it goes for 3 years.
So all these effective dates are in the future?
Correct.
Thank you.
Getting there.
Okay.
About time.
Commissioner Hernandez, did you have a question? No. Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. 12A, contract with Waterbury Youth Services. Wendy Owen.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you very much for fitting this contract in this evening. Wendy Owen, I'm in charge of people personnel for the city, and I would just like to introduce Kathy Crow, who is the Executive Director for Waterbury Youth Services, and we also have Raymond Demers here this evening. He is the, his title is the Program Manager for the Truancy Prevention Program. So I'm here this evening to request board approval for the contract with Waterbury Youth Services. Waterbury Youth Services is Waterbury's Youth Service Bureau, and they have been the designated bureau since about 1976. Waterbury Youth Services is a nonprofit, and they are exempt from the RFP process. The grant application has yet to come out from the state, and we are not sure when that will be coming out, so the actual amount to be rewarded will not be determined until this fall. The current contract does expire June 30th of 2017. That's why we were moving forward with this contract at this time, and Waterbury Youth will be requesting the same amount that they were awarded last year, which was $80,051.
What is that based on, the 80,000? Is that based on a formula on the state, or is that a formula on the city?
We have to, the city has to provide a match for us to be able to get the state money, and so it's based on the same amount of of state money that we got last year from the State Department of Education. We have not been in, the youth service bureaus statewide have not been identified in any of the budget cuts so far, in any of the budget revisions, but we put in the contract language that, you know, it's dependent upon, you know, the state budget being awarded and the amount being, you know, dependent upon the amount we're awarded by the state. So we're just assuming it's going to be level funded.
But I'm glad you put language in case it is at the last hour.
So we wouldn't have to come back to you, but.
Let's hope you stay in the budget. Commissioner
From
Van
your
Stone?
ears.
I'm looking, this was an add to the agenda, so I'm just looking back at it now. The city funding is from our operating budget?
No, it's the city.
It's the city side.
It's a city side.
Right, we provide in-kind.
Okay.
The mayor already has $75,000 allotted in his proposed budget for
They
next
have
year.
to build it in.
Wow, we got $80,000 from City Hall? Sorry.
75?
Sorry.
35, easy, no round.
Well, I'm looking at 80,000 in the letter. Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all you do. Good, thank you.
very much.
Very good.
13, Mr.
done?
Brenker.
No questions.
No questions?
No, you're good.
Thank you.
They like the freebie.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. We're here tonight, Mr. White and I are here tonight, to request that you approve a contract with John L. Simpson Company for the improvement of the Crosby High School main office. It's fully funded by the,
it is funded through the Priority School District portion of the Commissioners Network grant, so it is specific for improvements within Crosby, and it's particularly aligns with goals of making schools and all of more welcoming in their walkthroughs, so that while both positioned in a better way to greet and accept guests into the building, as well as provide better security by being the main office now being closer to the front door of Crosby.
Any questions? Commissioner Hernandez.
So I'm visualizing Crosby in my head. And you're going to make the offices closer to the front door, so you're going to get rid of that pillar that's...
The pillar stays, and that's structural.
Okay.
That stays. There'll be means of egress around there, but more where the vice principal's offices are currently, and a big chunk of that open lobby space that isn't really usable will become part of the main office. VP offices will relocate further back. There'll be some space, conference room space.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Would we be able to see a design of this, or what is the process here in terms of architectural design, or how does that work?
The design is in the back of the
Oh, I missed it.
very
Okay.
thick packet.
Thank you. I have to go look at it.
There are many parts of the design. You'll see the electrical, the mechanical, the demolition, and so on.
I just want a picture of it. No, I'm okay. Commissioner Van Stone, and then Commissioner Tom Van Stone.
Time frame?
I didn't hear, I'm sorry.
Time frame?
Start as soon as school's out, and hopefully plan to finish by October. The process they intend to use is first to build the external walls. They'll build them, that way to wall off any access to students or staff. It should be safe, and they will work at night, not during the day.
So...
After school goes back into session if they're not done.
That's my concern. Once school's back in session, what effect does that have on operating of the main office?
Principal Gopi is all set. She has a plan in place, and there'll be no impact on the operation.
Are they essentially working out of a temporary space in the meantime, or what is that plan of action?
They'd actually be working out of most of the existing office because the new space is in forward of the current office. So once that's constructed, they'll move into that space. So they'll stay where they are and move forward. Most likely it'll be the vice principals, that'll be the people dislocated during this process.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Van Stone, Thomas Van Stone.
Thank you, Madam President. You're right, it's a big package.
It's
Very
huge.
detailed.
It's the standard contract plus all the associated
Plus
documents.
everything else, right. I did look at the drawings, they seem fairly well done. I haven't gone and found yet, like, terms and conditions. I'm sure it's in there somewhere, and I'll go back and look. However, when we go to see this beautiful new office space, and there's this big crack going down the middle of the floor, who's going to be responsible for those repairs?
I don't believe there's a crack now. I guess I'm confused.
I didn't say there was.
Oh, if there, I understand.
There
now.
wasn't
Thank you,
one at
Commissioner.
Reed either before they built it.
I understand. I think this is using VCT, the tile, so it'll be covered so you won't see if there is a crack. It'll be covered. Hopefully, there won't be a crack.
You know where I'm
but
going with this.
I understand.
And we've been held responsible for faulty construction, faulty design in the past. So are there anything in the terms and conditions that will protect us for once?
It's a standard contract that the city issues with the construction company.
That's what I was concerned. So I'm still going to look through that, and I may have some additional questions next week, so maybe you want to say what Rocco and
Sure.
understand that we've asked these questions before, right, with some of the issues we've had with buildings. Maybe actually attorney would be better, right? We need to start protecting ourselves against construction flaws.
Right.
Okay, so I would appreciate if you could maybe do a little research on that, and I'll ask just a general question next week if that's okay.
I will, and I'll also hope to have Mr. Sullivan here.
Okay.
Tonight, he's on his honeymoon.
Congratulations.
Not to me. So
Honeymoon, that was a couple
he
years
took
ago.
3 days off.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
sweet.
Okay, we're set. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have number 14. Commissioner Sweeney has a lot of policies.
Oy. Oy.
Quick policies, right?
Okay, 14A, there's a state statute that recently added school bus inspectors to the list of people who are allowed to carry firearms. That necessitated a change in our school policy to cover that piece of legislation, so that is the change that is before you on that.
I'm sorry, is this A? School
14A,
visitors?
14A.
Says school
Visitor regulations.
School visitors policy?
Correct.
Oh.
Correct, because we have reference to, if you look at bullet 7, there's reference to no visitor except a law enforcement officer duly authorized by the Waterbury Police Department is allowed to bring a weapon of any kind into any school in the district or on school grounds. That has been changed to include the reference to the state statute that adds that school bus inspectors are allowed to carry firearms.
Who is a school bus inspector? Are they a police person?
Motor vehicle.
Motor vehicle.
Yep.
Well, I'm just going to say that they wouldn't, I have no issue with it. I just, that they probably shouldn't be on school grounds, but secondly, wouldn't they be on the fleet site? They wouldn't be inspecting on our schools, would they? They'd be at the fleet, the site.
School,
right?
Technically, the bus is considered part of the school. So
Right, but wouldn't they be at the fleet? They wouldn't be inspecting on our site.
They
I
would
have no
be
issue
on,
with
they
it,
would
but-
be on the bus. The bus is considered school property.
There could be the rare occasion where they do stop a school bus. They can do that, and that would be with a student or students on the bus that would be considered school.
Interesting.
Legislators should.
Another law passed.
Really unbelievable.
Corporation Council and Chief Riddick have both reviewed and signed off, so.
Okay. Commissioner Vansto?
That's what I was
Oh,
going to
okay.
say when we brought it up. Chief Riddick was involved.
Okay. B,
Okay.
14B.
14B, the USDA now requires code of conduct for food service personnel. Food service personnel are covered under the city's code of conduct. Therefore, it's a simple new policy that indicates that they are covered under Chapter 39, Ethics and Conflicts of Interest on the city side.
Perfect.
Right. Required policy by the USDA.
Okay.
Okay.
All set? Okay. C.
14C is the food service charging policy. This relates to the ability of students to be able to charge their main lunch. This refers back to the fact that the city of Waterbury students for their main meal do not pay. Students across the city in Waterbury receive a free meal. Therefore, there is no charging policy necessary. Our charging policy very clearly states that because they receive free meals, we don't have a charging policy because we don't allow them to charge. They don't need to charge. Again, required by the USDA.
So this is a non-policy.
A policy of a non-policy.
I know.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Moving on.
Okay. 14D, recruitment and selection. There were some changes to the state's statute in the requirements for the hiring of retired teachers, and you will see that in red, that new language that comports to the state statute.
Okay.
Okay.
Moving
And
right
in all
along.
of these policies, any legal references were also updated.
Was that E?
Nope, that was just a comment.
Everything up to E.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, now we're on E. Security check and fingerprinting, the FBI has new regulations under the Criminal Justice Information Systems that now requires us to add references to criminal justice information systems and criminal history record information systems under our policy for security checks and fingerprinting. We went through this with John Herman to make sure the city is already in compliance with everything here, and he also signed off on this policy.
Is there any real-life implications or impact on daily life?
No.
Okay.
Nope, the FBI wanted some FaceTime in our policy, and they got it.
Okay. F.
14F. Okay. So this is an adjustment to our discipline and student conduct policy. First of all, I want to make clear, because there is some misconception. The piece that has been amended here is simply the requirement by the state that we add some language that says the district will follow a progressive discipline policy. We have had progressive discipline in place since like 2008, 2010, somewhere in around there. And we have a policy currently that we follow. This only is to add that language, this one paragraph you see in red, that says we follow it, because the state now requires that your policy read that you follow a progressive discipline approach to discipline. This is not what our Safe School Climate Committee is working on. They are working on the matrix for the actual discipline. That is not what this is about. The policy tonight that you are looking at is that the addition of that one paragraph that says the Board of Education supports the utilization of a progressive discipline approach. Okay?
So it's just stating what we're already doing.
We have already been doing it for the last several years, but the state recently required that every Board of Education develop a policy that says they follow progressive discipline.
So the policy that the School Climate Committee is working on, that we discussed
They are working on the matrix.
And that includes, who is on that committee? I believe it's representative of teachers and principals,
Wendy?
correct? We're trying to make the difference.
Careful in those heels, will you please? Killing me.
I'm used to it. I would just like to talk about who is on the committee. So we do have a member of the WTA, who is Shannon DeSantos. Mr. Egan was also invited to join the committee in mid-March. The committee did not begin meetings until February due to a change in leadership. So our Safe School Climate meetings began in February. Once again, we have Shannon DeSantos. She's a member of the WTA. Mr. Egan was invited to meetings mid-March on. Commission President Brown. We also have Michelle Baker, Instructional Leadership Director, Noreen Buckley, Instructional Leadership Director, as well as several administrators, Patty Frazier, Lori Peck, trying to think who else. I'm sorry, Jay Gopi, Jackie Davis is on the committee. Cindy Hammond.
Fine. Yeah, I think we just want to make sure that it's an ongoing thing. No decisions have been made. It hasn't.
No.
The policies
No.
are being worked on, and we'll go through the curriculum
Yes.
committee and the policy committee.
Absolutely.
No decisions have been made.
No decisions. This is an ongoing process through the JJPOC, through DMC. I sit on several different committees and looking at what's going on a state level, also as we're moving towards restorative practices. So taking that into consideration, also looking ongoing, analyzation of our suspension data, both in and out of school, and taking into consideration, looking at our handbook and the progressive interventions and discipline. And the team is working on just basically updating that, because there are some interventions that we don't have an SAT team, we haven't had an SAT team in a number of years. So really just updating that, revising that, looking at does the punishment fit the crime, and doing what's in the best interest of both our students and staff. We want to maintain a safe, secure environment that is socially, emotionally, and supportive of everyone.
Okay, thank you very much
You're
for the
welcome.
clarification. Commissioner Van Stone, this is not, I just wanted to clarify, that's all. So you're good.
Thank you, Madam President. So the state says we have to say something along the lines of the Board of Education supports utilization of a progressive discipline approach. Correct?
Yes.
Why do we say everything else?
Pardon me?
Why do we say the other rest of the paragraph, which,
That's a policy that already exists.
the red part already exists?
The red part is the only part that isn't.
Right. What I'm saying is of the red part, why not simply say the Board of Education supports the utilization of progressive discipline, period, end of sentence? The rest of the stuff about building upon strategies, positive behavior, all the other stuff seems to, at least in my opinion, and we seem to head down this path every time we talk about discipline, take the discipline out of discipline. It's okay to have discipline. You know, the idea that discipline shouldn't simply be punitive, well, sometimes it should be. If someone's doing something wrong, they need punitive actions. The rest of the policy and the rest of the materials that the Climate Committee and the others put together can go into detail about what progressive discipline is, how we need to teach the whole child, how we need to do all the things we're supposed to do. But it seems like every time we need to put one line of policy in, we tend to double or triple down on it about how no one will ever really get in trouble, which I don't think helps anybody. So if this is being added into this piece of the policy handbook because the state says we need to note progressive discipline, I would say we do exactly that and don't need to go the extra mile. Do what they tell us to do and then stop there. We can work internally with our own approaches on how we want to do things that don't necessarily have to be handled in a policy manual, but I worry that sometimes when we write things like this, we give off the impression that safety and discipline aren't things that we necessarily care about enough. And I know that's not the intent, but I hear very often out there that every time we talk about things like this, we seem to dilute the some of the teeth of some of the things we're supposed to do. And I hear that a lot from the classroom teachers as well, that every time we write something like this, it to a degree, not with every kid, but seems to give them a little bit more free rein and read this in a manner that discipline is something that is slowly being sucked out of the system, and I don't think that's a right thing. So there's a long-winded way of saying if the state says we need to have one line about progressive discipline, have that one line and nothing else.
Thank you.
The language came as a suggestion from CABE, and it was the language that the policy committee reviewed and decided to adopt.
Oh, and I agree, and that's fine, and this reads like something the CABE would give us.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think, since it hasn't been voted on, if the board as a whole wouldn't mind addressing exactly what the state wants us to address and nothing more, because they already have enough strings on us, that might be something we look at.
Any other comments about the addition, the language? Commissioner Theriault.
Yeah, whenever we look at these, the discipline policy, I'm always reminded about the novel of The Tale of Two Cities, because that's what we have here with regard to discipline. We have our normal discipline code, and then we have our discipline code for our special ed kids. I think the number is it a 504 plan? Is that what we call it, Superintendent?
Pardon me?
504 plans for the special ed kids?
No, that's other health impaired. There's a
Okay.
difference between 504
What's the
and
number?
IEPs,
IEPs, yeah.
Yeah.
What do we call that?
individual educational
Okay.
plan.
So it's not the 504 plan is something else.
Correct.
Right. So students that have these special education PPT plans or IEPs, if they break the rules and it's determined that that's a manifestation of their original problem, we wouldn't take the same disciplinary measures against them that we would a student that didn't have such an IEP.
Mrs. Baldwin.
That's where I get the tale of the two cities, because we really have a discipline code for our regular kids in a somewhat, I don't want to say watered down, but surely very, very modified for our special ed kids.
Would you like to respond?
Not
Melissa?
yet.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
not quite done.
I thought you asked a
Almost.
question.
Or
did you answer it?
So when we see this manifestation, that's automatically a no-no, hands off. And, you know, I agree with progressive discipline too. In my school when I was a principal, I had a 6-step discipline, you know, progressive discipline. You know, I took the kid in, I spoke to him, I chastised him, took his recess away, did other things, called his mother and father, had a parent conference, etc. 6 steps. I don't know why we have to ask a kid 4 times to take your hat off on 4 different days. Now, is there any measure where we say, okay, we're not going to progressive discipline because this is a really serious thing. We're going to suspend this kid right away for 5 days.
For a hat?
If he's no, not for a hat, for something
sorry,
else.
okay.
Something more serious. Yeah, if he wore a Red
Definitely for
Sox
Yankees.
hat, yeah. No, seriously.
No, I
You know, I
understand.
mean, if there was a serious, you know, a serious measure that regarded the health and safety of another student or teacher, you know, do we ever say, okay, but I know the answer is if that same thing were to occur, we would have one rule book for the special ed kid and we would have another rule book for the other kids.
Not exactly.
And maybe that's as it should be, or maybe that's as it shouldn't be. But progressive discipline has its measure, and when we talk about the 160 kids that were suspended for a violation of the dress code, you can't tell me that some of those kids weren't warned 4 times. You can't tell me that some of those kids weren't in fact told 4 times or more not to wear the hoodie, not to do this, not to do that. Nobody ever researched that. We just gave a blanket amnesty to all the kids. You know, we get letters.
You had a question for
Yes,
Melissa?
I'm getting to the point.
Okay.
Commissioner Brown and I received a very irate letter recently regarding a parent had a lot of concerns. You know, and I tried to explain to that parent that, you know, we have to abide by the law. This is the law. This is what we have to do. So I'll let you answer the question. Thank you, Commissioner Brown.
The question, I think, Commissioner Theriault, is in terms of a special needs student, does the discipline code apply to them as it would to a regular student? Is that your question?
Correct.
Okay.
So it does depend on the disability of the child at hand. Children with disabilities can be and are suspended from school, in school, out of school. They do receive other consequences. They go through all the same processes. In the state of Connecticut and through federal law, once a student is suspended from school for 10 days, we have to reconvene a PPT meeting. At that PPT meeting, we determine if the suspension was due to a manifestation, like you said, exactly. And if it was due to a manifestation, we have to plan for a more appropriate program for that student. If it was not a manifestation of their disability, then it's the same as any other child. So I'm not sure if I answered your question completely. I mean, we have to have, every time a child is suspended for 10 days, and hopefully this doesn't happen often, but we have to have a manifestation PPT and then plan appropriately for that child. That could be a functional behavior assessment, a behavior intervention plan. We could put in more counseling. We could put in check in and check out, depending on what is going on with that child and what the team feels that child needs based on the data that's available to them. So when are these things happening?
So basically a modification of his IEP.
Right. Right,
Right.
if it's a manifestation of their disability,
Right.
we have to go back in and make a plan so that that child won't do that behavior again,
Hopefully.
hopefully.
Right.
Right.
So once you do that PPT,
Mhm.
is it tabula rasa now? We get a clean slate and we start all over and we wait for 10 more days?
We do.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so on the table was a discussion of modifying the language to eliminate some of the description, if you will. So the will of the body. Any other comments? Read what you think, where it should stop, Jason.
Thank you, Madam President. What I simply wanted to do is keep to the letter of apparently what the state is telling us what to do. So if they say that our policy needs to say something along the lines, and I'll steal the language right from this draft, the Board of Education supports the utilization of a progressive discipline approach, period. I'm of the opinion that that one sentence in its entirety fulfills what the state wants, still allows us to create a progressive disciplinary plan within our own protocols, but the rest of it doesn't need to exist in a policy manual. So I would simply ask the consideration of the full board that the paragraph that came out of the policy committee be scrapped in favor of that one sentence.
Okay. Commissioner Sweeney, do you have any opinion on this, or?
I think, I think the rest of the paragraph describes what a progressive discipline approach should include. And I don't necessarily see that as watering down discipline. Again, I think it's a descriptor of exactly what the content of a progressive discipline policy should be. So, at the will of the board.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll consider it, I guess, at the next meeting, at the board meeting. Thank you. Okay. G.
Okay, 14G is in relation to homeless students, new laws that came out mostly through the feds and McKinney-Vento Act. There are 3 changes to language that must be included. One is no homeless student will be denied enrollment based on lack of proof of residency is the current language, or due to barriers such as fines, fees, or absences is the addition. In the second paragraph, access to district programs include public school programs administered by the district is the addition. And on the third paragraph, third paragraph, the superintendent will appoint a liaison for homeless children who will perform the duties as assigned by the superintendent, and the additional language is and detailed in the administrative regulation accompanying this policy, and we do have the administrative regulation in place. And we are in compliance at this point.
We are in compliance?
We are in compliance.
Any questions? Okay. Next.
14H is the student athletic eligibility policy. This was revised because we revised our QPR. And this revision was gone through and explained by Joe Gorman.
Are we in compliance with it now?
Yes.
We already are doing
compliance.
this. Okay. Any questions? Commissioner Vanstone.
Does a 1.67 GPA equate to a 70? Because it says either or. Which is the worser?
What is it? I didn't hear what you said.
Yeah, we went through
C
this when
minus?
we did the QPR.
So C minus would also be a 70.
Yes. A C minus, yes. That would be a 7.
Okay. If it's essentially the same thing, I was just wondering if there was any real differentiation between a 1.67 GPA number or a 70 grade. And the
you all
back
set?
of the room says we're good.
Okay.
It's all right.
Any other questions? Okay. Moving along to I, administering of medications.
This has to do with new state regulations requiring policy for administrative of anti-epileptic medications to students, and you see that paragraph in the red.
And again, are we currently complying with this? Or is this a new additional mandate?
This is a new additional mandate.
Any questions? Okay. Jay?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, did you have a question?
Yep.
Oh,
I thought you were calling me. I apologize.
Okay?
Yep. 14J.
14J. 14J, the only issue here was that when we last revised this, we somehow lost the legal references. They have been added back in.
Okay. 14K.
14K is one that has been a subject of discussion both at the board level and at Lighthouse, the issue of our field trip policy. The language now gives the approval to the chief academic officer for most field trips. Out of the country field trips will still require Board of Education approval.
Any questions? Thank you. You had a busy committee meeting.
2.
Number 15, use of school facilities by school organizations and/or city departments.
And one more to go.
16,
And one more to
use
go.
of school facilities by outside organizations and/or waiver requests. Okay, and superintendent's notification to the board.
I'm sorry, I did have a quick question.
Oh, sure.
18A, Mayor's Run Club appointments effective. What are those? Are those stipend like phys ed positions? What are those?
Just closed up.
Here, it's right here.
Sorry.
It's the,
We have 4 people appointed to the Mayor's Run Club, one from Bucks Hill, West Side Middle,
Mayor's Run Club
or
appointments.
Wallace Middle, I'm sorry, Bunker Hill and
Is
Duggan.
this the marathon?
Marathon.
These are the mentors, I believe?
Yes.
They're the mentors?
Yes.
Yes,
So these are the 4 folks who hit up that Rod Dixon thing?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to go into executive session?
Motion to convene into executive session for discussion concerning the appointment, performance evaluation, health, or dismissal of a public officer or employee.
No. Discussion, all in favor? No.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained?
I oppose.